Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Shana Francesca, interior designer, life design consultant, and life design coach. Please enjoy Shana Francesca. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I am here with Shana Francesca, interior designer, life designer, and speaker. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Mari. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I am so excited too. I can't wait to dive into the world of creativity with you. But before we get there, if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes and letting our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, Mari, my name is Shana Francesca. I'm an interior designer. Been doing that for 15 years, life designer and speaker. And I had a really difficult childhood upbringing situation. And
I like it's called a situation.
It's a situation.
Yeah.
No need to go into it. But the point is that it taught me a lot of things, and I gained this understanding of the energy of a space and how we need to feel safe and seen in our home. And it is a reflection of who we are. And I really truly believe that our homes are a vision board for our life. And not only that they are the stage from which we tell the story of our life. And when we get really clear about the story we want our life to tell, we can get really clear about what that stage looks like. And we get really intentional about all the choices that we make that stack on top of each other, that create a really beautiful life, right? We get to understand that we get to take up space, and not just to take up space, but to take it up really beautifully and intentionally.
Oh my gosh, like sign me up. I'm sold.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I can't wait to redesign everything. Nice. I love that. And just what we were talking about right before we hit record around the design of a space is about living in that space, and how those two design elements really go together. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about how that happens for you.
Yeah. So, what I love to sit down with clients and get really clear on what story they want their life to tell, right? And that sounds like, it can sound a little woo-woo, but if we don't know the story that we want our life to tell, how in the world do I construct a beautiful home that sets the stage for that, right? How do I make sure that we're creating a space that's, perhaps you're someone who really loves to entertain. How do we create a space that does that? And then how do we set up your life in a way, and all of the things that are in your home in a way that really funnels all of your energy to that thing? When we've got a lot of extraneous things in our life, in our head, in our home, they all are reflections of each other. It's like bouncing off of mirrors, right? And so what I love to do as a life designer is really sit down and whether I use that specific language or not, say like, okay, what story are we telling with your life? And we're not discovering how we get to these things, but what are these things that you want to happen in your story, right? And then I'm like, okay, great. Now I can design your home so that it sets the stage for that beautifully, right? And I kind of create the metaphor around like if you've ever gone and seen a play, you can't like if they're all the sets, I'm laughing because I imagine this in my head whenever I say this. If all the sets from all of the different portions of the play, but all of the acts of the play are all on the stage at the same time from minute one, right?
Mhm.
Or like at any point in time, they just keep adding more sets, right? And instead of taking away, it just is now the stage is full of nothing but these overlapping sets. Do we really understand what the story is telling us? Because we don't have any context for it. Right. And so we've got to create our home as like giving ourselves psychologically, like the context for the story we're telling, because we're really simple. Our brains are really easy to trick. So if we can live our life and feel into the future we want to create inside of our homes, then we can manifest that. We can create that. It's not about strong arming the universe. It's about gently hinting the universe towards the story that we want to tell with our lives.
Nice. And I'm picking out the pieces of when you say story, it's like someone who likes to entertain or someone who likes to feel really cozy, or they like, specific colors. They're very bright stories they're telling, or very muted stories. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I talk about this is like, I know really intimate aspects of my clients' lives as well. Like I need to know, like, are you single? Are you married? What do you like? All these different aspects of your life, like, because I need to know what that furniture needs to handle, right? Like I need to know, is it having a lot of heinies on it? Is it just your hiney and your dogs, right? Like all these different things go into it. Fabric, texture, like all of these things are influenced. All these things, I want to tap into all 5 of your senses. I want you to walk into your home and it be a really immersive experience. And so that we're triggering those feelings of, okay, this is my story. This is my life. I can breathe. I can relax. I can be me because I'm seen and understood inside my own home.
That is so beautiful. And I imagine so much creativity goes into that, not only listening to people talk about their story and what they vision and what they want, but also your process of listening to it and then creating it. So what does it mean to you to be creative?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I love that. So what does it mean to me to be creative? It's a really good question. I say all the time, I think and you say this, I think everyone's creative. I think it's understanding that our society has created a really narrow definition of what creative is, but an accountant is creative. I don't want to say creative with numbers because that sounds illegal, but they are creative with numbers, right? Because they're looking at how do we spend the money? Where are the benefits that we get from taxes if they're a tax accountant? Like all these different things. It's about understanding the juxtaposition between things and being able to see what seems like disparate pieces of information, but they're not, and understanding a new way of connecting them that perhaps we ourselves haven't seen before or we haven't seen represented in the world, right? It's just connections. It's really just connections.
I love it. I love your use of the juxtaposition between things. That felt like it really captures what it means to be creative in such a unique way. I've not heard someone describe it in that way before. So awesome. And how does that creativity show up in your designing of a space, whether it's for someone else or for yourself?
It shows up in, I don't have a signature shot. I don't have a signature style, which many designers do because it's great for marketing, right? Because then somebody knows exactly what they're getting, right? And people love surety, love knowing a definite. But for me, it's going in and I'm not asking necessarily a client what their favorite style is. I might walk with them through their home and I hear the way they're describing their home and I'm hearing the things they're talking about. And inevitably, because I'm there, a client might start diving into the things they love the most in their home. This sculpture or this piece of art or this tchotchke or this blanket or this pair of shoes or this jacket or this something, right? There's always something that I start to pick up or see, right? And I don't like clients to clean their homes before I come. I'm like, please don't clean, don't organize, don't touch a thing. I need to see what we're working with here, right? I need to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I need to know what we need to create resolution for, or what I need to create around, right? But also it lets me know the things you're touching all the time. Right? So the things you're touching all the time are the things that are most likely not put away.
Right.
So then I get to see, oh, that's their favorite, whatever, or their go-to, whatever. Right. And so then I get to start to craft who this person is based on how they describe their life and who they are and what they want to create in their home. And then what I'm seeing in their home. And now I get to create a style that might pull from several different style types, but is a uniquely crafted for them. And is really, what I love about that is we get to be really intentional about how it connects to them, and it's authentically connected to who they are. So it's not placed in a specific time period, right? It's not attached to any trend. And so we're also then kind of tackling consumption for the sake of consumption, right? And we're getting really intentional about what we're consuming and how. And when it's authentically connected to us, we don't feel the need in 5 years to redo our entire home, or 10 years to redo our entire home, because it's attached to a specific style that is no longer the trend, right? When we step outside of trends and we step inside of ourselves, we can get really intentional about our life.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And as you were talking, taking us through someone's house and watching them touch different things, it made me think of what a present moment experience design is for you, to pay attention to all of the things that are happening right here, right now.
Yeah.
And also I'm so curious, what is your relationship with uncertainty? Because as you're talking, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman has it down. She is.
My relationship with uncertainty is that we are besties. You have to be no, you don't have to be. I think you don't have to do anything, but when you want to lean into being a creative person, uncertainty is the name of the game, right? Yeah. And I relate it to curiosity. So for me, staying curious is what allows me to see connections between things that don't look like they're related, right? Because I get to lean in and ask a question, and it's not a loaded question. It's open to possibility. But what does that mean? That means I'm not certain that I'm going to nail it the first time that I present a design mood board to a client. Like 99.9% of the time I do, but I'm always scared crapless that, can I say crap?
Absolutely.
Crap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crap and worse if you'd like.
Okay.
It's fine.
I get scared crapless because I'm like, what if this person doesn't feel seen at all by what I present them the first time, right? What if I totally missed it? And that is a terrifying place to be. But I've gotten really comfortable with being really uncomfortable. Like that's the place I live my life from. Number one, because I own my own business. I mean,
sure. Yeah.
Right. If you go into owning your own business thinking that everything's going to be blue skies and brilliant, I mean, you're not going to last very long. So you've got to get really comfortable with being really uncomfortable really quickly, and, now I'm 5 years in, and I just realized that what we see isn't always a reflection of all the things that are going on, right? And all the truth. And so that's part of going back to why I don't like my clients to clean up their house, because I'm not judging you based on what your house looks like, because those things might be out of sync, right? And you just need my help to get them in sync, right? Because who you are is this beautiful, complex thing, this being that exists in all these layers of self and creativity and beauty and wisdom and knowledge and understanding and all these things. And I'm not categorizing you based on one thing that I see. I'm listening, I'm looking, I'm taking it all in. And so, it's just, it always just goes back to curiosity and intention. That's everything that I do. just circles right on back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so much of that is all about creativity. I mean, creativity really influences our curiosity and uncertainty, and being able to sit in uncomfortable, like being okay, being uncomfortable, and
yes,
not getting it quote unquote right, and learning
there's no
and
such
growing.
Thing.
I know. So, I mean, the world would be a better place if we all figured that out, but
yeah. When we all figure it out, it will be a great place.
There we go. Thank you for the reframe. I appreciate it. But I also hear like there are challenges in life and in the experience and in designing. So how do you face the creative challenges you come up against?
To be honest, I don't know that I run up against that the most difficult part of what I do is creative challenges. And maybe it's just because I've grown a lot of muscle around that.
Yeah.
When something doesn't work, when a client doesn't love a solution for something, sometimes it's a matter of reframing it and giving them time to digest. Other times it's going back to the drawing board. And that doesn't bother me because I don't take it personally, because I am looking to depict who you are in your home. This isn't my home, and this has nothing to do with my ego, right? There's no ego involved. Or I do my best to keep my ego completely out of it, right? Sure. When it does come in, I'm like, it's going to be okay. You're great at this. Just because you didn't nail it the first time, it's going to be fine. But the most difficult thing, I think, is the interpersonal interaction and the growth that happens there, right? I'm like 60% life coach and like 40% designer, right? Like that's where the interaction like really heavily lies, because communication is the thing that we've got to start, like where trust comes from, right? Is our understanding of communication and getting on the same page there. And that is a huge part of what I do and how we're going to work through this process. When people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and sometimes millions of dollars, working on projects with me, that's a huge amount of money and a massive, that feels very vulnerable. You're trusting me with that, right? You're trusting me and my creativity with that. And so there's gotta be this open line of communication. And so many of us, especially as women, we were not raised to speak our truth and just to even be allowed to sink into who we are, to be our authentic selves. We don't even know what that looks like because there's so many layers of societal expectations to cut through. And the same for men. There's so many layers of they're not allowed to be the one who wants the space to be designed well unless they're gay, right? Like, as a man, you don't care about what the house looks like. That's her job, right? Like in a heterosexual relationship. And so I've got to peel back all those layers and be like, let's just be human here. Like, and let's redefine what that means. And let's sort out communication and understand that we're all seen and heard here and we're safe here and we're going to create this as safe space. Right. And so everyone's ideas need to be brought to the table. So really the most difficult part of what I do is recrafting people's understanding of communication.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, as a therapist, I do that often. And it's like doing it in the world, like outside of the therapy setting and in a design setting. I mean, how important to be able to bring your authentic self literally to the table to say like, this works for me, this doesn't. And I mean, just all of when you were talking about kind of the gender roles and society's genderizing of different things and stereotyping. Oh my gosh. Ridiculous. So having to sift through all of that to really get to who someone is and what they want and what they like and how they want to be and how that supports them to be even more of who they are.
Yes.
It's like, this is life design for sure.
It is life design. Yeah. And I mean, many times, I'm when we enter in, I'm like gently or carefully being like, so like trying to understand if they're in therapy, have a coach, you know, especially if we're like, there's, you know, especially if we're like designing from the ground up, we're doing a massive renovation, which is most clients.
Mhm.
There's a lot there, you know, and it uncovers a lot, and we touch a lot of aspects of people's lives. And so like having some extra support can be really
Yeah,
helpful to make sure that like marriages don't crumble,
sure.
that families, that everyone, that we're like all playing in the sandbox well together, right? Like we all know there's enough room in the sandbox for all of us.
Right.
Space is quite literally infinite, like literally.
Yeah.
We have no understanding of the ending of space. So
Mhm.
like it's gonna be fine. We're all gonna be fine. And it's my job to dovetail everything together beautifully. You guys don't have to worry about that. I've got it. Don't worry.
Nice. I mean, and hearing all of this, I'm really curious for your own self, like what are your creative self-care strategies having to
Mm.
navigate and support all of this in your professional world?
Yeah, my self-care routine has to be on point. When it slips,
Yeah.
it gets real hairy real quick. um Having, especially when I first started the business, I had a coach for a really long time, and
Mhm.
I have therapists, and at different times, I don't have multiples, but
Yeah.
I'll go see a therapist for a couple of months at a time, and just do like some check-in, like
Yeah.
make sure that I'm like good and focused and I feel cared for. But my daily self-care routine, I always tell people, you know, most people don't recognize where the heart pumps blood to first.
Mm.
And it pumps blood to itself,
Mhm.
right? From one side to the other, like right, left. Um, it cannot care for the rest of the body if it doesn't care for itself first, right?
Mhm.
And so if we don't take care of ourselves, we cease to exist in our whole authentic space, right?
Yeah.
We become fractions of ourselves, slowly letting the most beautiful parts of ourselves start being starved to death. And
Mhm.
so when I first wake up, I do my level best to ignore the siren call of my phone. And um, I usually toss it next to my meditation mat, because I like to use the Tibetan bowls sound effects for when I do
Mhm.
my meditation. So I still have to have it on while I'm meditating, but I'm do not disturbing it the entire way.
Yeah.
And I just drink some water, and I sit on my meditation mat, and I might light a candle or something that kind of evokes like a soothing scent that I specifically associate with meditation. So like
Mm.
Palo Santo or lavender, and
Mhm.
I'm or sage, and I'm sitting there and I'm breathing that in, because scent is one of our strongest connections to memory and to emotion. And
Mhm.
so we can trigger ourselves into a specific emotional state. And when I trigger myself into a specific emotional state while I'm meditating, I really can get present
Mm.
to, okay, this is how this day is going to feel, right? I don't
Mhm.
know what's going to happen,
Mhm.
but I'm going to walk through this day really knowing that I'm inside my body. I'm
Mhm.
here. I'm not inside my head. I'm doing my best to keep the noise away and just let myself feel into the moment. And then I spend like half an hour listening to an audible or a podcast or something that really like
Mhm.
enriches me, enlivens me. I love learning. So that like wakes me, especially I'm a psychology nerd. So I'm usually reading something by like Malcolm Gladwell or Adam
Yeah.
Grant or Brené Brown or like all of these amazing, incredible people. So I'm like diving into that. I
Mhm.
spend the first 2 hours of my day for me. The long story short
Oh,
is the first two
nice.
hours of my day are for me. That's the one benefit of having your own company, is setting
Right.
your own time schedule. And I don't have kids and I'm not married, so I get to do what I want to do. So I spend the first 2 hours of my day for me. And then
Mm.
usually my project manager and I jump on a call and we're talking through the day. Or
Mhm.
we'll meet in person and we're like going through and just like getting ready for the day. So my self-care routine is pretty pretty good. And then somewhere during the day, I try to go for a walk
Nice.
and or do some Pilates so that I'm getting some like breathing in there and just taking in the sun. It's like, it's intense. My self-care is intense because what I do is intense.
Yeah, but very intentional as well. Like
Yes.
what you said, if your self-care starts to slip, can get hairy really, really fast.
Yeah. Especially, like when I'm in a client's home, like I need to be able to be present and be there for them. I can't be stuck in my own head. I can't be like over here wounded, trying to patch my own wounds when I'm, really there needing to be present with a client.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, glad to hear you have this robust self-care routine. I was like the therapist in me, like, oh my gosh, you're holding so much.
Yeah.
Good to know. Just like the whole experience of creativity and supporting other people. When you think about, creativity in your own life, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
I started keeping a journal and writing when I think I still have them. My earliest journal is pink and has like a little lock on it with a heart. And my handwriting is atrocious. I think I was like 6 or 7 at the time. And, I colored and things before then. I've always loved coloring. I still have coloring books now, like coloring books and crayons, like super old school style. But yeah, in my earliest memories of like keeping a journal and then writing, I have notebooks and notebooks full of it, full of like short stories and essays. And I still have sketches and drawings from like early on. And because I grew up in such a difficult home and house situation, my outlets were usually nonverbal. Right. And I also have ADHD. So, my connection to the world, it felt like it was coming at me 1,000 miles per hour all the time. And it was, and my brain wasn't able to filter things out. So I had to kind of find a way to get myself into the zone. And so my creativity was always the way. And I started dancing at 18 months old. I've danced my whole life in one form or another, acting, singing, all of these things. So like my creativity is so multifaceted. And I think so many of ours are. So yeah, I think I've probably been singing to myself since I was like able to talk. So yeah, my earliest memories of like variety of creative things. That just, I don't know, I lived in a world of my own making for a really long time.
Yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. Some out of choice and some out of necessity, I'm sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And do you still write and you still sing and dance and
I still write. I contribute to different like articles, but I've also written my own and been published a few times. There's in my plan, in my life story.
Yeah. Tell me.
There's books in there. Being able to share, who I am and how I got to where I am and really what does it look like to design your life beautifully. So there's like a book somewhere in the future, not that distant future. And yeah, so I still write. I love drawing. I'll still paint. I'll sketch out murals for clients sometimes. Nice. Or sometimes I've painted, when I first started out, I painted them myself.
Wow.
So I always am looking for ways to challenge my creativity and my understanding of what it is. Right. Like, one day it might be me like collaging things. And the next day it's, writing something. I really try to challenge myself to write, to do something creatively every single day, no matter what it is. And it doesn't have to be the same thing. Whatever I feel that day needs.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. And like creativity is so many different things. And
it might be a random dance party. Those are my favorite kitchen random dance parties.
Yes. They're the best.
They're the best. So cathartic.
Yes, they are. That I dance with my cat. Dance around the kitchen.
I'm usually like just dancing. I'm dancing with the pot of whatever I'm cooking. I'm like stirring and dancing.
I love it. Oh,
yeah.
I have a nice visual of that. Yeah. Stirring and dancing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, when you think of people who may not feel this robust creativity in their life that you have, how would you encourage others to find creativity in their lives?
I think sometimes it helps to find someone to help you to reframe what creativity is, because we all have it. Just sometimes our definitions of it are limiting, right? And so we can't see what we don't understand, right? So if, like a horse with blinders on, if our definition is creating this very limited view, and our creativity lies in the periphery outside of that blinder view, then we're not going to be able to see it or identify it as creativity. So I think getting an outside opinion, like talking to friends and being like, hey, what would you say? In what ways would you say I'm creative? Right. And this has to be somebody you really trust, right? And who really understands, and you, and there's so many layers to that, right? Like the person who deserves to be asked that question, right? Because they understand boundaries and they understand why you're asking and all of those things, right? I think that outside opinion sometimes can be really, really helpful, because they'll say something, you're like, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Right. And then we get to choose to be like, even if I don't see that in myself, okay, I accept that or I don't accept that, right? We get to choose. That's the even more cool part, right?
Totally. Absolutely. I love that. It's a great reminder too, just about identity in general, is we get to choose.
We get to choose
what we say we are, what other people say we are, and who we want to become, if creativity is a part of that.
Yeah.
There are so many ways to flex it and participate. Nice.
Yeah. I like to think about it as other people's opinion, and other people's opinions of me are none of my business. And yet, if you're someone who I choose to allow really close in my life, your opinion does matter, but only when I solicit it, really.
Sure. Yeah. Unsolicited. No.
Unsolicited. Yeah. Without consent. There's consent in friendship, 100%. My friends and I have instituted this, even this moment, to be like, hey, do you have space for me to talk to you about this difficult thing or this whatever thing, right? Because, we just like to check in and make sure, like, do I have consent in this moment to take up your time? Do you have the space for it?
What a beautiful investing in that relationship of friendship of, I need support. Do you have time to provide it? And you're able to say no. Like, that's a valid.
And we have said no to each other before, like, actually today's not a good day, but maybe next week, right? Or I'll let you know if that changes or when that changes, Yeah, absolutely. And like, you can feel yourself just breathe into that. It's like creativity being applied to friendship, right? We don't have to craft anything the way that anyone else says. There are no rules. There are laws, but there really aren't any rules that we don't choose to allow to sit and be in our life.
Absolutely. And creativity, I think, just brings out so many more opportunities, and there's so many more choices we have when creativity shows up, and we get to be curious about it and flex it in different areas, in friendship, in relationship, in literally wherever. So
yes, exactly. It applies to everything.
I love it. Oh my goodness. This has been such a treat to chat with you. I just have one last question.
Sure.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Feels like a deep breath.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah. When you asked me, the first thing I did was take a deep breath. And I was like, oh, that's the answer.
I love when that happens. That's the best.
Yeah. Like a deep breath, because when we're being creative, we're tapping into the most authentic part of ourselves, the part that feels the most vulnerable, the most exposed, right? Because it's the most sacred parts of us. So we don't want someone else to not like it.
Yeah.
But when we sink into who we are, we don't need someone else's validation. We are whole and complete just as we are, without a single external validation.
Yes.
So a deep breath.
Ooh, So good. Thank you so much for sharing all of these pieces with me today and listeners whenever they listen. If people want to learn more about the things that you do, where can they find you?
Yeah. So the easiest, there's lots and lots of ways, and I'm sure I'll send them to you so you can tag them on here. But on my website is Concinnate.world, and I have my own personal speaker page there. And there's a lot of information about who I am and why I founded the business. And Concinnate is the name of the business. The definition of the word is on the website. It's a stunning word. I love that word. It's spelled CONCINNATE.world. So there's lots of links to our socials and to my socials, the business's socials, all the articles and things I've written. So there's lots and lots of stuff there for people to tap into.
Wonderful. Well, I will add it all to the show notes so people can have easy access. And thank you so much for chatting with me. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it too. I said going into it, I was like, this is going to be a great conversation. I can feel it. So
I
did not disappoint. Not at all.
Wonderful. Neither did you. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing all of the pieces, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.